All right, so we're going to do a wheel building video. It's going to be done in sections, as I really don't have a way to mount the camera or hold it for the whole process. So hopefully it'll come out fairly smooth. I've probably built over 100 wheels myself. Road wheels, BMX wheels, mountain bike wheels. I've even built tricycle wheels, like for the big adult ones. I built 48 spoke 20-inch wheels, which are a nightmare because there's no room. I've done radial laced, I've done carbon fiber spokes, done alloy brass nipples, I've done Torx heads, I've done nipples that mount to the hub, like some of the Mavic ones. Anyway, so basically I've done this enough times that I might unfortunately skip a few little things here and there because to me it's just something I've done so much I forget the little details. But because of it, I also have a lot of tips that'll help. So hopefully this video will help you. If you are uncertain of anything, whether it's the ordering of parts or specific steps or things like that, I would definitely consult with somebody in person, either a shop or somebody you know locally that has built wheels that can help you. If this is your second wheel build, third wheel build, or you're got a pretty good idea what you're doing, but you would like some more tips, this perfect video for you. First thing is you got to know what you're dealing with. So you got to know your hub and you have to know your rim. So you can order the right spokes. You need to know what the cross pattern is, how many times the spokes cross on one side. Four cross is typically very strong and very forgiving. 3 cross builds a stiffer wheel, a little stronger than a 4 cross, but is less forgiving. So if you happen to hit something hard, it's more likely to tweak. Radial lace is very strong vertically, but doesn't take a whole lot to knock it out of true, and it's really hard to get it back in true because of the way the spokes are running straight from the hub to the rim, no cross at all, no angle. So the first thing you'll need to know is your hub. You can find most hubs online, and it'll give you the flange diameter, the width of the hub. Of course, you want to fit your bike. This is a 20 millimeter through axle, so that doesn't really affect it because you're only looking at where the flanges are and then the distance. You can find the measurements online for a lot of hubs though, but I still find it better to measure them in person. You want to know the flange to flange measurement, which is nice to have calipers to do this. Unfortunately, my calipers, you can't really read the numbers because it's kind of old and rusted, but it's a cool tool. So I'll measure it and then use it against a ruler. You want to get it close to the millimeter as possible. So that's the flange to flange. The other thing that's really important is when you measure the flange height, you're actually measuring from the spoke hole to the spoke hole, not all the way to the outside of the flange. Hopefully you can see that okay. So when it says flange height, it means from the center of the hole on this side to the center of the hole on this side, not all the way out to the very edge here. You also want to know how much difference there is on your brake side versus your non-brake side on a front hub, and your brake side versus your drive side on a rear hub. This is all the measurements for that hub. They're not really important unless you have the exact same hub. Then I use an online calculator. You'll want all these dimensions. On a rim, I will use what's printed on the rim. This is an ERD 532. That is the dimensions that the rim manufacturer uses to measure this rim out. So this is actually a better measurement than doing it by hand. I highly recommend using the rim measurements from the manufacturer, I highly recommend measuring the hub yourself, as long as you're comfortable with your own measuring skills. Then I use multiple online spoke calculators. You got the drive side, or the, on the front hub, obviously it's still the drive side, even though there's no drive. And then you got the disc side, which is going to be the side that the brake mounts to. Obviously, if you're not using a disc brake, your front hub's probably going to be centered. Your rear wheel will be dished. But make sure you keep a track of your two spoke lengths, especially on a wheel that you're going to use different spoke lengths on the drive side and the non-drive side. Luckily, the difference in this measurement compared to this measurement is not enough. I can actually use the same length spoke for both sides. It's only off by 1 millimeter. It'd be silly to go 253 for one side and 254 for the other, so I just did 254s for the whole wheel. So that's the first section of this. Measure your hub. Use the rim dimensions provided by the manufacturer. Use multiple spoke calculators, kind of figure out what the average is. If you get one that's obviously really high, but the other ones all agree, then get rid of that high one. Don't average it in, just get rid of it. And then order your spokes and your nipples. This is kind of a preference. Double butted spokes are a little bit lighter in the middle and also are stronger, but they're more expensive. Nipples, you can use brass, which is nice. It holds up well. It also slides well on the rim, so when you're tensioning it and truing it up, they actually work really well. You also don't need spoke prep, nipple prep like you would on some aluminum nipples, with the way it binds up against an aluminum rim. So again, personal preference, but these are straight gauge with brass nipples. Should be a real strong wheel, not overly expensive. I don't need the lighter weight of a double butted spoke. So that's the first section of video. All right, so here's step 2 of the video. This is probably one of the biggest tricks you will learn after you've done this a few times. When you put the spokes through, the first set of spokes, you want to go through the outside flange first. Every other hole. You'll understand why this is so important later. But for now, just know that is a very important step. Every other hole from the outside flange through towards the middle. So when you pull it up, it'll look like that. They'll hang through like that. So I'm going to go ahead and lace this one side of the wheel so you don't have to watch me do this one-handed. But very important tip, go from the outside of the outside of the hub through the flange towards the middle of the hub. Huge, huge tip. All right, so once you have those through the hub, it looks like this. You can see they run, I wish my phone would focus a lot better here. You can see they run through the hub, and then I got them just all facing down right now. Next biggest step is going to be putting them in the right holes in the rim. Again, this is where I'm using all the same length spokes, so I didn't have to separate out my spokes. But obviously, if you are using 2 different size spokes for 2 different sides of wheel, make sure you know which side is going on which side of the hub. And then the rims, sometimes will have holes right up the center of the rim. As you can see on this one, they're actually offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the valve hole, which is right there. And I'm going to take, you can see that this hole will be the first hole I use. So you're going to want it to attach to the hub also on that side. So I'm going to take that first spoke and run it through that hole. you can see this is the direction of the hub, and then that spoke will go into the hole that's on that same far side of the rim. So I also like to use grease on the end of the spoke. Some people use spoke prep. You can if you want. Honestly, I've used grease for years and it works just as well. It keeps things from seizing up, especially if you have aluminum nipples. So you want to just touch it, just put a little bit on the threads. And then as you go around this rim, you're skipping to every fourth hole, but they're all going through that same side of the rim that matches the hub. So that'd be the next step. All right, so we have the initial set of spokes in. Every other spoke hole on the hub, every fourth hole on the rim, because you're gonna have 2 spokes from each side hitting every other one. So, but you can see this is what it's gonna look like. It's all laced up on that one side. So the next step is to put the spokes down through the hub. Here's where it gets kind of important. This is where you can tell when somebody's built a wheel before and not. So there's the valve hole. Oh, I'm having some problems in the camera today. So you can see that that spoke runs to the far side of the hub. So I'm going to try to put, I'm not going to try to put, I'm going to put the next spoke from the opposite side of the hub. Is going to go right. There's the valve stem. There's the first spoke. Second spoke's going to go right there. So I'm going to try to get the spoke from the opposite side of the wheel, 1 hole over from this one. So if I put that spoke right there, you can see that the next one over is going to be, if I line that up correctly, you can see that the next hole over is going to be this one right here. I'm going to drop it through there, make sure it doesn't go through the whole flange on the other side of the hub. And then that will be the spoke that goes into this next hole right here. So you're going to drop all those, every other spoke through this side of the hub, and then loosely lace it all around to match the other one. The reason you do it this way is because when we do go for the cross in the wheel, we're going to twist this, and we're going to twist it away from the valve hole. And so if we did it this way, we couldn't twist, we'd still twist it, but it would twist over the valve hole. So that's where you can really tell if a wheel was built by somebody that knows what they're doing or not. All right, so now we got the first set of spokes laced from each side of the wheel. You can see that the spoke heads are on the outside of the hub. Again, that's a super important tip, and you'll understand why in the next section. Here's your valve stem. You can see the offset spokes and how they come down from the hub. So there's the valve stem hole. So you're going to want to twist the hub this direction. See how it twists it away from the valve hole? That'll give you that nice opening so you can put a pump head in there. So now you can see the wheel is twisted. It's the beginning of being a crossed over wheel. So now the next step is we'll put the spokes through the holes on the opposite side of the flange, drop them through this direction, through that bottom hole, and you'll end up with your spoke heads on the inside of the hub. And this is where that tip becomes important, because you'll be able to flip them up on the other side to cross the wheel. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Again, I'm sorry I can't show you these in action, but it's impossible to hold the camera in one hand and build a wheel with one hand. So that's where we're at. So here's what it looks like actually dropping those spokes through. You take the straight end, obviously. You put them through that bottom spoke hole, let it fall through, put it through that spoke hole, let it fall through. Let it fall through. This is exciting, I know. Let it fall through. Let it fall through. Let it fall through. Let it fall through. I actually have one spoke, too few. So as you can see, when you pick up the wheel, now all those spokes are free on this side. And that's why it's important, if you put it through the other direction first, it's a nightmare to get the spokes back through here. So you can see the wheel has a spin to it. So these spokes are going to go the opposite direction of the spin. And this is a 3-cross wheel. So you got cross 1, cross 2, cross 3. And these are all on the same side of the wheel. Bend the spoke a little bit to get through. It's going to go in this hole right there. And that'll be your first cross. I'll show you another tip here in just a second. When working with a deep arrow rim like this is a nightmare. You go to put the spoke nipple on through there. You can't really get your fingers in there. So you can't hold on to it very well. So if you don't have the correct tools, this is when you drop your nipples into the rim and then you have to chase them out. So what you do is you take another spoke, a spare spoke or one of your other ones, and you take the nipple, thread it on backwards. Ignore the crying kid across the street. Okay, so it's on backwards. Then you take this spoke, thread it through that hole up onto the end of the other spoke. Push it through. You can see it's pushed through. Sorry, I can't do this all with one hand. And what you're going to do is you take the other spoke and bend it. Put the end of it in that nipple. Sorry, the camera's not adjusting here. There you go. Now you can grab that nipple with your fingers and twist it and put it on. So putting on that second spoke seems like a whole lot of an extra step, but honestly, after you've dropped a nipple or 2 or 10 into a rim like this, you realize what a huge time saver it is doing this way. So huge tip there. All right, so here's that spoke on that nipple, nipple on the spoke, sorry. And you can push it through the hole and get started on that spoke, possibly. You can see the head is just barely sticking through there. Now the thing is, you won't be able to screw it by turning this spoke, so just thread this spoke into the nipple. So what you can do is hold it in place, then grab a straight screwdriver like this and stick it in there and start, unscrew this spoke and then start screwing the nipple on with this if you can't get enough of the nipple through to grab it right there. As you unscrew this, you just want to keep your finger really tight against there to keep the nipple from coming back out as you unscrew this spoke. All right, we now have 3/4 of a wheel built. This side is all crossed. The other side still just has the first set of spokes. That's why you can see there's a big gap in between some of the spokes. So when I was talking about crossing spokes, you can see this is all on the same side of the wheel. This spoke right here crosses this one, and it crosses this one, and it goes on top of those two And then it crosses this spoke. And these are all on the same side of the wheel. This one goes under. So it goes over, over, under. That's a 3-cross wheel. On a 4-cross wheel, it would go over, 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 under. The cross is really important. It builds tension into the wheel, also keeps the flange a lot more stable. So if you look, the bottom side, because remember we put these in first, so the head would be on the outside, it crosses under, under, over. So again, it's 2 and then 1, you know, over, over, under, or under, under, over. But because of the way you lace the wheel with the heads and those spokes being through first, that's why it's over, over, under. So hopefully that makes some sense. Also, you can see the valve hole right there. Yeah, black rims, black nipples, black spokes. It's not really easy to see, but you can see how the spokes coming on that side of it are vertical. Once I cross the spoke from the other side, it's going to be vertical as well. And so you have this nice square opening where you can put a pump head in. So that's why it's important to know which way to spin the hub. So the last set of spokes just need to be dropped through from the inside. Again, that's why this tip was so important. If you try to run a spoke through that flange going this direction, you have to bend the hell out of it to get to go past this cross. So it's much harder on the equipment, but it's also just harder on the builder. So that's why it's such a huge tip which way you put the spokes in to start with. So I'm going to finish that up, and then when I get it all laced up, I'll give you kind of the last tip on how to get the tension started from your wheel build. Try to get it kind of started out evenly, and then you can work from there. All right, and here's the last tip on building your wheel. You can see both sides are laced, everything is crossed as it should be. There's the valve stem, and you can see it's a nice big square opening. You know, the wheel obviously has almost no tension at this point. So what you want to do is you want to take a straight screwdriver, a thin one like this, and you can actually get to the heads of the nipples. And it's hard to see in there, of course. But you want to get to the heads of those nipples, screw them in with a screwdriver. Basically, you can see the threading right here. You want to screw every nipple up until it's even with that top thread, all the way around the wheel, and that'll get your tension even to start with. After that is when you actually start putting some serious tension on the wheel, truing it for hops, truing it for trueness. But that's the best way at this point. Just kind of get everything evened up. Every single one of these spokes, just screw the nipple all the way up till it's on that last thread, all the way around the wheel. Anyway, that's basically a wheel built. Sorry about the crappy video quality and doing it in sections like this. Like I said, don't use this as your only guide on how to build a wheel, but there's a lot of good tips here from somebody that's done this forever. So, hope it helps you. Sorry about the quality of it, but the quality of the information is good. So, I don't know, maybe it'll help some of you. Anyway, thanks for watching.